Welcome to the Carl Sterling Podcast, delivering conversations with experts and excellence in education.
There you go. All right. We are live. We are live on Zoom. We're live on Facebook. And boy, I've been looking forward to this conversation. My guest today is, to me, a real special guest because a lot of you who listen to my program regularly know some of my history. And I'll just say that a book that he is an author of, personally my favorite book, most life-changing book for me personally of all the books I have, which is hundreds, really changed everything about how I live my life. And so then once I learned more about my guest, so, oh man, this gentleman has done so much incredible work as a writer, an educator. In fact, Ben Stein, the actor, the author, he calls my guest a poet. I mean, I could go on for 30 minutes with an intro, but I would like to welcome my very special guest, Mr. Michael Long. Thank you for joining me. How you doing, man?
Hey, I tell you, you're good for me, Carl. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're good for me too. I wasn't aware of all the other work you did until a little while back. I started researching, and I've heard you on some podcasts here and there, maybe one with Daniel Lieberman. But, you know, thank you again for joining me. The book I speak of, folks, by the way, is called The Molecule of More. Yes, thank you, because I have one and it's loaned out. Daniel Z. Lieberman and Michael Long. And you know, I deal a lot with people with dopamine deficiency here in the movement disorder world, with Parkinson's, MSA, PSP, and other conditions. Well, years ago, I learned about some about dopamine. And I tell you, when I got this book, it changed everything about learning about my addictive behaviors, because I have that type of personality. I have to be addicted to something. So now it's all good things, and I live a healthier and better life, and I love it. So Michael, how you doing, first of all? How's everything in Virginia?
Oh, it's wonderful. Another pretty day here. It's turning fall. The weather's nice. I'm busy, which is what I need. That's what I'm addicted to, is busy. So yes, I'm doing well, working on some new books. Have some news to share with you about that today.
Good.
And yeah, it's all good. Thanks for asking.
It's fantastic. By the way, if anyone has questions on Zoom, put them in the chat box. If you have questions on Facebook, write them in the comments. I'm monitoring. Michael, how did you get involved in this book, The Molecule of More? How did you enter into that fold?
Sure. Well, the book, the title explains a lot. It's the title here is How a Single Chemical in Your Brain Drives Love, Sex, and Creativity and Will Determine the Fate of the Human Race. Not too much of a big promise there, huh? Not too much. And this is a book about the role of dopamine in the brain, which sounds like as dull a topic as one could pick. But in fact, as you know, Carl, and as those who've read the book may know, the best way to understand the world itself and how we interact with the world is to think of the two ways that we connect. Mm-hmm. We either anticipate stuff, and that's a good feeling to anticipate something like kids before Christmas, or we enjoy what we have, like playing with the toys at Christmas.
Yes.
Now, it turns out the far more attractive feeling, the one that can trip into addiction is the feeling, again, use that word attraction, the looking forward to something, the desire for the things we don't have. That's what pulls us into the future. And that's what dopamine does. If you have too much of that, you can be overwhelmed by it. You can be obsessed with that chase. If you have just the right amount of it, you can be highly creative and productive. You have too little, you really don't make much progress at all. So this book is about how that process works and how we balance it with what we call the other experience, the H and N's, the here and now experience. How do we balance seeking what we want, via dopamine versus enjoying what we have, the here and now neurotransmitters. And with that in mind, I can answer your question. Dan Lieberman, Dr. Dan Lieberman, and I have been friends for at least 2 decades, more than that, actually, almost a quarter century. And a few years ago at lunch, we decided that it would be fun to write a book together. So the surprise may be that this was not a mission. This was the result of 2 guys who really didn't like sports and who wanted to do something that would put them in the same room regularly. Mm-hmm. And so Dan, who's a psychiatrist who is at George Washington University, and I'm at Georgetown University. Mm-hmm. And he said, let's cast about for an idea. And he came across a book by a man named Fred Previck. Fred Previck, neuroscientist, mm-hmm. who had investigated dopamine 3 or 4 decades ago, written a book about it, and not much attention to that book outside of specialists. But Dan brought it to me, and he said, I think that if these ideas were expanded upon and presented so the layperson could understand them, it might be life-changing. Carl knows that. Mm-hmm. And so we talked. I remember where we were. I remember exactly where we were sitting in the restaurant in Washington, D.C. And he said, I think I have it. So this book was inspired by the work of Fred Previck, who we acknowledge. He's the first person we mentioned in the book. Mm-hmm. And we spent a couple of years doing this backwards. Carl, you've written books. You know how this works. Typically, when you write a book, you write what's called a proposal, or actually what you write is a pitch first, and then you write a proposal, which just describes what you intend to do. It outlines the book. It's a lot of work to write a proposal, but it's not as much work as writing a book. Yeah. And what we did was we said, because we're rather independent dopaminergic guys, we said, we're going to write the book we want to write, and then we'll try to publish it. Mm-hmm. Totally backwards. Mm-hmm. So we spent over 2 years writing this book.
Interesting.
And after we'd written it, we started to send out pitches only at that point, and we wrote a proposal. And the usual response from two agents who represent your book to publishers, and usually an agent's response is, how long do you think it will take to write the book you've proposed? Mm-hmm. And our answer was always, well, I have it here on this drive, would you like it? Anyway, I'll come up for air for a second, Carl, because I've been talking for a moment. That gets us to the point where we were ready to sell a book we had already written on a lark and on a promise. 2 years of work with no guarantee of pay.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, let's go into, if you don't mind, I want to talk about other things you do and you have done. It's so interesting to me. We could do a 10-episode series just on your work, seriously, or more. But I'll tell you, the thing that I actually think about this every single day. For example, I'm out yesterday at breakfast. I don't ever eat breakfast, but I did yesterday because I went out, family. And I'm looking at this omelet when it comes, because I love this place, the omelets they make at this place. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, the very most excitement I have is right before I take the first bite. Mm. Because it's almost like the law of diminishing returns. Now that first bite is epic. And I love the hot sauce. I love it really hot. So we put some hot sauce on, and that's a rush. And I'm trying to be appreciating each bite with my here and now, endocannabinoids and the oxytocin and all these, and enjoying it. And then I get to the end, and there's a little bit of sadness on the last bite. I mean, not sad, depressed, but it was so good. But I don't have as much dopamine. Like every bite is more dopamine than the next, because. But what I find is this whole thing about dopamine and the anticipation, the drive towards getting some. I'll tell you what I really want is I've got an iPhone 10. I really want the 14, but I know what's going to happen. First of all, I don't need a phone. I just want it because I know the camera's better and I know I can do more things, and I'll have it, and in 2 to 4 weeks it'll just be like whatever. It's just a phone. And then I have to not want the next one that's coming out. Right. And that's how they get you. I'm telling you, they do it on purpose. They know dopamine makes us buy things, I'm sure. It's got to be a marketing scheme there somewhere.
they may not understand it from a neurochemical
Yeah.
perspective, but they understand what it is. And let me shed a little light on it. And you know this from reading the book. I'll refresh your memory. If you knew exactly how you would feel when you had the new iPhone 14, you wouldn't want it nearly as badly. But that's not true. But that's not because of the nature of how it will make you feel. It is because right now there is the possibility that it will make you feel so much better than you can imagine. That is, you think it'll make me feel pretty good, but there's a possibility it'll be spectacular. Now, the difference between what you expect and what happens is called a prediction error.
Yeah, interesting.
And the greater that error is, the more of that dopamine hit, the more it draws you in. If you go to the door, when the doorbell rings, there's always a chance it's somebody to present you with a check. Not much of a chance, but it could be. And if that has ever happened even once, where good news has come, you ever heard the song "The Wells Fargo Wagon" from the Music Man?
Yes.
And they go through it. Could be something for someone who's no relation, or it could be something special just for me. And that's the thing. Every time something that has a whiff of the unknown attached to it comes along, it's possible that could be fantastic. If you know every time somebody knocks on the door, it's just the guy putting the newspaper there, you don't care. But if sometimes it's the Amazon guy with a package you want, or somebody with a present, so the bigger the difference, the greater the possibility that it's something good, not even good, something unexpected, and the more dopaminergic rush you're going to get. So that's why you want the phone, not because of how it's going to make you feel, but how it might make you feel.
And that's a very, very important addition there, in perspective and thinking, the possibility. I love that. And Lieberman talks about that. You talk about it in the book. Possibility is huge.
Yes.
Possibility is huge.
When you talked about breakfast and you said the first bite, just before the first bite was the best moment, of course it was. This looks so good. This may be the best eggs and hot sauce I've ever had. And then you bite it and it's not. And dopamine begins to fade, and the H and N's take over. Now you're enjoying the taste of it. That's not nearly as intense as the anticipation, what might be possible. So what happens is dopamine, it doesn't really hand off, but in effect, dopamine says, my work is done. I've got you here. Now enjoy what I have. Enjoy what you've brought. And the problem highly dopaminergic people can have is that system doesn't hand off. It doesn't turn down or turn off. It just keeps going. Now what else can we find? Now what else can we do? As we say in the book, Neil Armstrong, who went to the moon, he's a highly dopaminergic individual, and he was asked, what are your thoughts on having been to the moon? And here's what he said, word for word. It was something we did. Now we should do something else. The experience of being on the moon was not anything significant to him. It was, wow, that's as big as it gets. And his life crashed and burned as a result, because there was no bigger report prediction error for him to experience than going to the dang moon.
Like, what's next?
Yeah, what could follow that? And it turned out nothing could, and he had a lot of trouble.
So this is really interesting because, for example, I have an addictive, probably brain. I'm probably highly dopaminergic. One of the things that happened when I read that book is my focus on being able to look at myself in the mirror and really be honest and say, okay, dude, be honest with yourself. That can be a really hard thing to do, and you can put it off maybe your whole life or for a long time, like in my case, and then look and say, you got a problem. You didn't take too much of this, you eat too much of that, blah blah blah. And every time you do it, pretty much every time, you actually don't need it. Like, and then another author from Lifespan, David Sinclair, Dr. Sinclair at Harvard. Interesting stuff. We're talking about eating and why do we eat? Do we need to eat nearly as much as we eat? The answer is most of us don't need to eat as much as we eat, but eating can be so comforting. And that gives us that feeling of gratification, instant gratification. I've certainly been there a million times eating emotionally. Sure. Except that it took so much work to lose this 30-something pounds. And now I feel so good, I'm addicted to CrossFit. So I go with my daughter like 3-4 times a week, and I started.
What a wonderful problem.
That just crushed and melted the fat. Plus, I was scared to death to go. I mean, I'm a master trainer, National Academy of Sports Medicine, blah, blah, big deal, right? But no, I thought it'd be bad. I love it. So now I can't wait to go. But the bottom line is, what I'm realizing is dopamine there can be a healthy focus. In other words, for me, it would be not to turn this towards me, but I might as well.
No, you should.
Experience with it is you can create the dopamine within yourself by focusing on getting it a way that's healthy rather than an external dopamine spike or causing it from an external source like booze, food, sugar, drugs, maybe for some, whatever, or video gaming for 12 hours a day or porn or, whatever it is. I mean, the things, they're external sources. And then when I started concentrating after this book about internal, everything changed. Thank you, Michael Long, for this.
Well, you're so kind, and nothing makes me happier. You said you'd seen me in other of these, and I got to tell you, I do them very occasionally. I don't do a lot of these, but your story is so compelling that I had no choice. I had to say yes to you, and I have to give the credit here. I'm a writer who's trained as a scientist. I am not a scientist who moonlights as a writer. I'm primarily a writer, and my friend Dan, Dr. Lieberman. This is his thinking and ideas. This is my expression of those ideas. So I want to be sure that Dan gets all the credit, because he is absolutely a gifted psychiatrist and critical thinker.
Yeah, and I like his new book too, Spellbound.
Spellbound, yes,
beautiful
Spellbound.
Book.
Great book about the unconscious.
It's really fascinating. So let's move out of the molecule of more. Although I saw something somewhere, maybe it's in your resume I have here, or bio. Is there a sequel coming?
Yes, that's the news.
That's the news
with you. It'll be in Publishers Weekly. I think.
In line to buy it.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it'll be in Publishers Weekly this week or next. I'm not sure the timetable on that, but the tentative title is "Taming the Molecule of More." We've already signed this contract. It'll be published probably in the spring of 2024, maybe a little earlier. And so if you like the ideas in the Molecule of More, Taming the Molecule of More is a how-to guide for putting these things into practice in various areas of your life.
This is beautiful. Oh, I can't wait to get that.
I have the new manuscript open in this monitor right over here. So.
Oh man, I just want to spy on you now.
you'd go, this is it?
Yeah, right. But the anticipation is so good. I'm so excited about that. I know it's going to be top level, top notch material again. Can't wait. Okay, get ready, folks. The Taming of the Molecule of More.
Taming the Molecule of More.
Taming the Molecule of More.
Just put taming in front of the old title. You got the new one.
All right. Okay, good. Well, okay. I'm just curious. I have to say this to people just because it impresses me. Politics, policy, nonprofits, and education. Some of the people you've worked with or for. Executive President George W. Bush, Vice President Walter E. Mondale, Donald Rumsfeld, William Bennett. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Tom Ridge. This is fascinating to me. Robert Dole. I mean, the list goes on. So I'm curious if you could, in entertainment, we got Jerry Seinfeld. Who doesn't know Jerry Seinfeld? and so many other things I could
right
go on,
there.
but
There's this
tell me
what
how.
we did together.
I'm curious to know kind of just a quick backstory on how you got into writing, and then how do these pathways get created? How did you wind up in these various positions? Because there are a lot of arms coming out of your where you've gone with this teaching and writing, and tell us, please.
Sure. I was raised in Southeast Missouri, in the rural South, far from any city. And so TV is sort of the opening to the world there. Well, to answer your question, I was interested in a couple of things. I was interested in science, in particular physics, and I was also interested in writing and comedy performance. And so that's an odd combination in some ways. So I went to the university, studied physics. I was going to be a theorist. That's what I wanted to do, was theory. Did some graduate work, and at the same time, I was doing stand-up and writing a little bit, and that was where my real passion was stand-up, and so I pursued that. Stand-up didn't really work out for me at the time, for a much longer story than we have time for, and I ended up working as a coder for about a decade. Converting business systems into mathematical models and coding them up in Fortran. A very interesting work if you're into that kind of thing. But time passes, and you want to do the thing that compels you. And so I thought, well, if I'm not going to do stand up, the people that I admire who write happen to be speechwriters. So I started writing them letters in the early 90s. And it turns out speechwriters don't get any fan mail, and they will write you back. So I wrote them and I said, this is what I want to do. And they said, come to Washington. I'll take you around. We'll have lunch on me. And that's it. And that's how it began. A wonderful critic you may not know named Terry Teachout, now recently passed away. It's from one town over from me. And he'd found great success as a critic, writing for the Wall Street Journal, a lot of other publications. And Terry helped me as well. So I came to Washington, ended up writing speeches for Senator Fred Thompson, the famous actor in the Senate, who, of course, was one of the attorneys at Watergate.
Yes.
The guy who wrote the question, what did the
Old
president
enough to
know?
remember that, too.
When did he know it? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wrote speeches for Senator Thompson for a while, although he hardly needed me. And then I ended up at the White House Writers Group, which was the Reagan and Bush speech shop. That turned its attention to the private sector after President Bush's defeat in 1992. And I joined them. And that's how I met a lot of those people. I've worked, mostly on one side of the aisle, but I've worked both sides of the aisle to some extent. Try to be issue agnostic and keep an open mind, love everybody. And then I grew acquainted with Ben Stein, who's an actor and a commentator and an attorney. And
he's an attorney? I didn't know that.
Oh gosh, what is he not?
What a guy.
There's a polymath right there.
Yeah.
And Ben and his father, Herb, who was the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors of the President under Nixon, became close with Ben and Herb, his father. And Ben was a mentor to me for well over a decade. And these doors began to open. What I discovered, Carl, is what I think you've discovered, which is if you do the thing that brings you joy, you'll get good at it. And then people want to be around you and give you work to do it. And if they don't, you're still having fun. So who cares? And that's the story of my career right there.
Wow. I think that's a great story. I love that story. Real quick, my story is I was a geek and a nerd, and I just wanted to learn as much as I could. I started a podcast 9 years ago. It led to 2 different jobs out of New York City, teaching and traveling around the world. Then I started my own company, my own program, as I got into movement disorders, and boom. And now, writing my 3rd book, I'm especially interested in talking with the writers, and you're the first one I've spoken with. Do you take private students?
Oh, well, we'll talk. How about that? Okay. You're a special case, Carl.
Yeah, I actually enjoy writing a lot. It's another reason I wanted to talk with you, because I find it to be a real beautiful form of getting things out of me and putting them into the universe. And if nobody reads it, it's okay. At least I got to write it down.
There you go.
What are you working on right now? What projects do you have happening? And you do teaching at the university, right? George Washington U, right?
I teach at Georgetown. I've taught there for 15 years.
Okay.
I teach in the master's program in public relations. I teach writing there, public relations writing. Over on the public side of the house, open to the public, so you don't have to be a student. I teach speech writing. I teach creative writing and special projects, often for sounds ominous, foreign governments, foreign entities that want to come in and train their speechwriters. I do a lot of that for organizations outside the U.S. My work falls into 3 categories, basically. There's the work that I do for myself, playwriting, this kind of work, short pieces. The other part I do is I ghost for other people. I've just completed 2 nonfiction books, and I have 2 others going for authors, for signers. And then I do this training. I do a lot of training through Georgetown, but mostly people call me up and want me to come to their company and train their writing staffs on very basic things, actually. It turns out that my philosophy of writing is, if you learn the basics, everything else sort of follows. And that's what nobody wants to study. But once they learn that, that's what nobody bothers to study, I should say. You learn the basics, all that other falls into place. So we spend, I train a lot of people that you can see there on my resume, some of the companies we've worked with.
Oh, yeah.
If you teach them the basics and get them really conversant in the basics, everything else just falls into place. And you more easily say what you want to say. You're finished faster. You're more satisfied with it. But all this complexity, you don't need that. Think Hemingway.
Yeah. Well, just for those watching and listening, some of the companies: Ford, McDonald's, Sprint, Verizon, Fannie Mae, Forbes, McDonald's USA, Willis Holdings, Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, Ernst & Young.
Cliff Bar. Don't forget Cliff Bar.
Where's Cliff Bar on here?
Oh, it's in there somewhere. I always think that's funny. I like that. I think actually I did some writing for them. I don't know if I did any training.
Oh yeah, Cliff Bar.
Yeah,
Ernst & Young, Cliff Bar. I mean, yeah, this is fantastic. Coca-Cola, Exxon. That's fantastic. Well, I think that's great that you do that.
I'm fortunate. I am fortunate. It could have happened to anybody. It happened to me. I am so fortunate.
Well, you seem like a pretty easy person to talk with and communicate with, and I think it's one of the things that also made me want to reach out to you is I've heard you before. I was like, this gentleman's going to be great to talk with, so I just have to try to connect. So again, I reached out and you said yes. Bravo.
Well, you put me on your show. I'm thanking you, Carl.
Well, no, it's my pleasure. It's my honor. I mean, we could go on and on and on, but I know we have some time constraints, both of us. Tell me so just for those watching and listening, we did not talk about anything. We've never communicated before other than email. And so the question I'm going to ask you is completely unfair, but I know you'll have an answer. Because you're the professional's professional. For anyone out there in the writing arena, let's say, who wants to do something, publish something, maybe put out a book. Again, I'm doing my 3rd one. What advice do you have for them?
2 things. I'll tell the first one by way of an anecdote. When I was doing stand-up, when I first started doing stand-up many years ago, I remember coming off stage, and the guy who ran the club, who was the guide for all of us as we got started, things weren't as active in that field then as they are now. He said, that second bit you do off the top. I go, yeah. He goes, take that out. It doesn't work. And I said, yeah, I know it doesn't really work, but it might someday, and I like it. He said, I don't care if you like it, take it out. And I said, but I like it. He said, you're not up there for you. You're up there for them. He said, I put you up there because I need butts and chairs to sell them food and drinks. If they're not entertained by you, they're not there at all, and I can't sell them anything. Therefore, the lesson here for all writers is quit writing for yourself if you intend to be published. Now, that doesn't mean throw away your inspiration, but it does mean don't say, I'm going to write what I want. And if you don't like it, you can go pound sand. Well, that's fine if all you want to do is put words on the page. But if you want to be published, you have to say, what does the market demand? What do they want? Write for them. The second thing is you got to treat this like a job. You can't go at it, oh, I'm going to futz with this a couple of days a week and this and that and a little bit of time. When the mood strikes, nobody has a job they work at when the mood strikes.
Yeah,
nobody's successful. Stephen King, someone once asked Stephen King, how does he get so much done? And he said, I wake up every morning and I say, okay, you SOB, it's time to get to work. The people who are successful at writing treat it like a job. They don't do it when they feel like it. They do it when they have to. Because if you want to be published, you're up against me and a lot of other people. Now, I'm not the greatest writer in the world. No way. That's laughable to even consider. But I'll outwork a lot of people, and there are a lot of folks like me. So unless you're ready to go to work, don't even bother showing up because you're going to get your heart broke. So number one, write for the people that you're trying to sell to. And number two, treat it like a job.
Okay. That's great advice. I can speak to that a little bit. My first book took 3 years to write, and it's because I did it part-time.
Yeah, well, 3 years is not bad. 3 years is not bad. That's good, Carl.
My second book took about 3 weeks, literally. But that's
a lot more scary than 3 years.
It probably really took longer, but I knew exactly what I was going to say. There are much less words. It's not proper grammar. Fewer words in that book, if that's a word. It's about a third of the size, and it says more.
There you go.
I'm happy with it because it also costs less to produce. I don't have a publisher. Amazon's my publisher. I have to figure out how to go about the publishing thing at some point in my life. But bottom line is that book is selling well because it's shorter and it says more. And, I did it. I just sat right down and I went to work, and I didn't know that's how I needed to do it, but it felt better.
Good.
So
good. You're way ahead of the pack.
Thank you for that advice. Just one more thing. So you've got the Taming of the Molecule of More coming out spring, probably 2024. And then any other books coming out that we should be looking for that you're involved in?
Interesting. I have a play, a one-act play in New York next month, the 13th through the 16th. It's part of the Players Theater Short Play Festival in the fall. It's just a very short one act, but if you're in Manhattan, you want to go down to the West Village, catch it at, as I say, October 13th and 16th. The show is called Fire Trap. It's a monologue starring Beth Gibson, and it will be, let's see, I guess it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday in the evenings, and Sunday afternoon down at the Players Theater on McDougal.
Beautiful.
I'm directing and I wrote it, so it'll be fun.
Well, Michael, I really want to thank you so much again for your time and everything you're putting out there, for all your inspiration, and really for helping me. I know Daniel's a psychiatrist, but you're a writer, and all this stuff that's in that book, and you explain it so beautifully right on the front end here. So for those who are watching and listening, be sure to pick up The Molecule of More.
There you go. Finally learned to bring a copy of the book to an interview. It took me years.
Yeah, pick the book up. I'm telling you, nothing can be lost by reading that book. If anything, I can appreciate my 3 little grandchildren a lot more now, because seriously, I'll get into here and now a lot quicker these days, instead of being often thinking the other world I'm thinking in while I'm holding one of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, grandchildren will do that to you.
They're all under 2. And, I don't want to be thinking about something else while I'm with them. So, it's just taught me so much about how to live now, live better, and actually be healthier. So thank you.
That's all that matters. Yeah. That's all that matters. There are a lot of things that we do in life, and I'm not getting rich writing The Molecule of More. I'll tell you that right now. But the fact that people come to me occasionally and come to Dan and say, this helped me live a better life for me.
Yeah.
Boy, I mean, what greater thing could somebody come up and just tell you that?
Yeah.
What a life that is. Wow. So thank you for giving that to me.
No, but it's my pleasure. And, if anyone out there wants to know more about how this book in more detail changed everything for me, just reach out to me.
There you go.
And you'll, just reach out. I'll be happy to share it because I got a lot of information I can share about that. And it's made my life a 180 turn in the opposite direction. So stay on with me just for 1 minute, if you don't mind, after this. And thank you, everybody, for watching on Zoom and on Facebook. Again, thank you to my special guest, Mr. Michael Long. We are grateful. Everyone, have a fantastic day, and thanks for watching. Take care.